The Buddha's early life, Asita's prophecy of a future Buddha. Indeed, the Blessed One is worthy and rightly self-awakened, consummate in knowledge and conduct, well gone, an expert with regard to the world, unexcelled as a trainer for those people fit to be tamed, the teacher of divine and human beings, awakened, blessed. Anguttara Nikaya, an 11.12 Mahanama Sutta. This selection of excerpts from the Pali Canon provides a rough outline of the life of the Buddha. I hope you will find enough in this anthology to gain at least an inkling both of the range of the Buddha's teachings and of the sweeping trajectory of his extraordinary life. The Bodhisattva, Buddha to be. Asita, the seer, visits the newborn prince. Asita the seer, in his midday meditation, saw the devas of the group of 30, exultant, ecstatic, dressed in pure white honoring Indra, holding up banners, cheering wildly, and on seeing the devas so joyful and happy, having paid his respects, he said, "Why is the deva community so wildly elated? Why are they holding up banners and waving them around, even after the war with the Asuras? When victory was the devas, the Asuras defeated. Even then there was no excitement like this. Seeing what marvel, are the devas so joyful? They shout, they sing, play music, clap their hands, dance. So I ask you who live on Mount Meru's summit, please dispel my doubt quickly, dear sirs. The Bodhisattva, the foremost jewel, unequal, has been born for welfare and ease. In the human world, in a town in the Sakyan countryside, Lumbini. That's why we're all so wildly elated. He, the highest of all beings, the ultimate person, a bull among men, foremost of all people, will set turning the wheel of Dhamma. In the grove, named after the seers, like a strong roaring lion, the conqueror of beasts. Hearing these words, Asita quickly descended from heaven and went to Suddhodana's dwelling. There, taking a seat, he said to the Sakyans, "Where is the prince? I too want to see him." The Sakyans then showed to the seer named Asita, their son the prince like gold aglow, burnished by a most skillful smith, in the mouth of the furnace blazing with glory, flawless in color. On seeing the prince blazing like flame, pure like the bull of the stars, going across the sky, the burning sun released from the clouds of autumn, he was exultant, filled with abundant rapture. The devas held in the sky a many-spoked sunshade of 1,000 circles, gold-handled whisks waved up and down, but those holding the whisks in the sunshade couldn't be seen. The matted-haired seer, named Dark Splendor, seeing the boy like an ornament of gold, on the red woolen blanket a white sunshade held over his head, received him, happy and pleased. And on receiving the bull of the Sakyans, longingly, the master of mantras and signs, exclaimed with a confident mind, "This one is unsurpassed, the highest of the biped race." Then, foreseeing his own imminent departure, he, dejected, shed tears. On seeing him weeping, the Sakyans asked, "But surely there will be no danger for the prince?" On seeing the Sakyan's concern, he replied, "I foresee for the prince no harm, nor will there be any danger for him. This one isn't lowly. Be assured, this prince will touch the ultimate self-awakening. He, seeing the utmost purity, will set rolling the wheel of Dhamma. Through sympathy for the welfare of many, his holy life will spread far and wide. But as for me, my life here has no long remainder. My death will take place before then. I won't get to hear the Dhamma of this one with the peerless roll. That's why I'm stricken, afflicted, and pained." Sutta Nipata, Sin 3.11, Nalaka Sutta, to Nalaka. The young prince grows disenchanted with his life of luxury. Monks, I lived in refinement, utmost refinement, total refinement. My father even had lotus ponds made in our palace, one where red lotuses bloomed, one where white lotuses bloomed, one where blue lotuses bloomed, all for my sake. I used no sandalwood that was not from Varanasi. My turban was from Varanasi, as were my tunic, my lower garments, and my outer cloak. A white sunshade was held over me day and night to protect me from cold, heat, dust, dirt, and dew. I had 3 palaces, one for the cold season, one for the hot season, one for the rainy season. During the 4 months of the rainy season, I was entertained in the rainy season palace by minstrels without a single man among them, and I did not once come down from the palace, whereas the servants, workers, and retainers in other people's homes are fed meals of lentil soup and broken rice. In my father's home, the servants, workers, and retainers were fed wheat, rice, and meat. Even though I was endowed with such fortune, such total refinement, the thought occurred to me: when an untaught, run-of-the-mill person, himself subject to aging, not beyond aging, sees another who is aged, he is horrified, humiliated, and disgusted, oblivious to himself that he too is subject to aging, not beyond aging. If I, who am subject to aging, not beyond aging, were to be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted on seeing another person who is aged, that would not be fitting for me. As I noticed this, the typical young person's intoxication with youth entirely dropped away. Even though I was endowed with such fortune, such total refinement, the thought occurred to me: when an untaught, run-of-the-mill person, himself subject to illness, not beyond illness, sees another who is ill, he is horrified, humiliated, and disgusted, oblivious to himself that he too is subject to illness, not beyond illness. And if I, who am subject to illness, not beyond illness, were to be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted on seeing another person who is ill, that would not be fitting for me. As I noticed this, the healthy person's intoxication with health entirely dropped away. Even though I was endowed with such fortune, such total refinement, the thought occurred to me: when an untaught, run-of-the-mill person, himself subject to death, not beyond death, sees another who is dead, he is horrified, humiliated, and disgusted, oblivious to himself that he too is subject to death, not beyond death. And if I, who am subject to death, not beyond death, were to be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted on seeing another person who is dead, that would not be fitting for me. As I noticed this, the living person's intoxication with life entirely dropped away. Anguttara Nikaya and 3.38 Sukhamala Sutta, Refinement. At age 29, the young prince goes forth into homelessness. Before my awakening, when I was still an unawakened bodhisattva, the thought occurred to me: the household life is crowded, a dusty road. Life gone forth is the open air. It isn't easy living in a home to lead the holy life that is totally perfect, totally pure, a polished shell. What if I, having shaved off my hair and beard and putting on the ochre robe, were to go forth from the home life into homelessness? So, at a later time, when I was still young, black-haired, endowed with the blessings of youth in the first stage of life, having shaved off my hair and beard, though my parents wished otherwise and were grieving with tears on their faces, I put on the ochre robe and went forth from the home life into homelessness. Majjhima Nikaya, MN 36, Mahasakaka Sutta. Passers-by take notice of his serene radiance and mindfulness. On going forth, he avoided evil deeds in body. Abandoning verbal misconduct, he purified his livelihood. Then he, the Buddha, went to Rajagaha, the mountain fortress of the Magadhans, and wandered for alms, endowed with all the foremost marks. King Bimbisara, standing in his palace, saw him, and on seeing him, consummate in marks, said, "Look at this one, sirs. How handsome, stately, pure, how consummate his demeanor. Mindful, his eyes downcast, looking only a plow length before him, as one who's not from a lowly lineage. Send the royal messengers at once, to see where this monk will go." They, the messengers dispatched, followed behind him. Where will this monk go? Where will his dwelling place be? As he went from house to house, well restrained, his sense doors guarded, mindful, alert, his bowl filled quickly. Then he, the sage, completing his alms round, left the city, headed for Mount Pandava. That's where his dwelling will be. Seeing him go to his dwelling place, 3 messengers sat down, while one returned to tell the king, "That monk, your majesty, on the flank of Pandava, sits like a tiger, a bull, a lion in a mountain cleft." Sutta Nipata 3.1 Pabaha Sutta, the going forth. A king wonders, why have you gone forth? Hearing the messenger's words, the noble warrior king straightway went by royal coach out to Mount Pandava. Going as far as the coach would go, he got down, went up on foot, and on arrival sat down. Sitting there, he exchanged courteous greetings and then said, "You are young, youthful, in the first stage of youth, endowed with the stature and coloring of a noble warrior. You would look glorious, in the vanguard of an army, arrayed with an elephant squadron. I offer you wealth. Enjoy it. I ask your birth. Inform me. Straight ahead, your majesty, by the foothills of the Himalayas, is a country consummate, in energy and wealth, inhabited by Kosalans, solar by clan, Sakyans by birth. From that lineage I have gone forth, but not in search of sensual pleasures, seeing the danger in sensual pleasures. And renunciation as rest, I go to strive. That's where my heart delights." Sutta Nipata 3.1 The Bodhisattva soon surpasses the accomplishments of his teachers. Having gone forth in search of what might be skillful, seeking the unexcelled state of sublime peace, I went to Alara Kalama and, on arrival, said to him, "Friend Kalama, I want to practice in this doctrine and discipline." When this was said, he replied to me, "You may stay here, my friend. This doctrine is such that a wise person can soon enter and dwell in his own teacher's knowledge, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge." It was not long before I learned the doctrine. As far as mere lip reciting and repetition, I could speak the words of knowledge, the words of the elders, and I could affirm that I knew and saw, I along with others. I thought, it isn't through mere conviction alone that Alara Kalama declares, "I have entered and dwell in this Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge." Certainly he dwells knowing and seeing this Dhamma. So I went to him and said, "To what extent do you declare that you have entered and dwell in this Dhamma?" When this was said, he declared the dimension of nothingness. I thought, not only does Alara Kalama have conviction, persistence, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment, I too have conviction, persistence, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment. What if I were to endeavor to realize for myself the Dhamma that Alara Kalama declares he has entered and dwells in, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge? So it was not long before I quickly entered and dwelled in that Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge. I went to him and said, "Friend Kalama, is this the extent to which you have entered and dwell in this Dhamma, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge?" "Yes, my friend. This, friend, is the extent to which I, too, have entered and dwell in this Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge." It is a gain for us, my friend, a great gain for us, that we have such a companion in the holy life. So the Dhamma I declare I have entered and dwell in, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge, is the Dhamma you declare you have entered and dwell in, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge. And the Dhamma you declare you have entered and dwell in, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge, is the Dhamma I declare I have entered and dwell in, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge. The Dhamma I know is the Dhamma you know. The Dhamma you know is the Dhamma I know. As I am, so are you. As you are, so am I. Come, friend, let us now lead this community together. In this way did Alara Kalama, my teacher, place me, his pupil, on the same level with himself and pay me great honor. But the thought occurred to me, this Dhamma leads not to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to awakening, nor to unbinding, nibbana, but only to reappearance in the dimension of nothingness. So, dissatisfied with that Dhamma, I left. In search of what might be skillful, seeking the unexcelled state of sublime peace, I went to Udaka Ramaputa and, on arrival, said to him, "Friend Udaka, I want to practice in this doctrine and discipline." When this was said, he replied to me, "You may stay here, my friend. This doctrine is such that a wise person can soon enter and dwell in his own teacher's knowledge, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge." It was not long before I quickly learned the doctrine. As far as mere lip reciting and repetition, I could speak the words of knowledge, the words of the elders, and I could affirm that I knew and saw, I, along with others. I thought, it wasn't through mere conviction alone that Rama declared, "I have entered and dwell in this Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge." Certainly he dwelled knowing and seeing this Dhamma. So I went to Udaka and said, "To what extent did Rama declare that he had entered and dwelled in this Dhamma?" When this was said, Udaka declared the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. I thought, not only did Rama have conviction, persistence, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment, I too have conviction, persistence, mindfulness, concentration, and discernment. What if I were to endeavor to realize for myself the Dhamma that Rama declared he entered and dwelled in, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge? So it was not long before I quickly entered and dwelled in that Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge. I went to Udaka and said, "Friend Udaka, is this the extent to which Rama entered and dwelled in this Dhamma, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge?" "Yes, my friend." This, friend, is the extent to which I too have entered and dwell in this Dhamma, having realized it for myself through direct knowledge. It is a gain for us, my friend, a great gain for us, that we have such a companion in the holy life. So the Dhamma Rama declared he entered and dwelled in, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge, is the Dhamma you declare you have entered and dwell in, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge. And the Dhamma you declare you have entered and dwell in, having realized it for yourself through direct knowledge, is the Dhamma Rama declared he entered and dwelled in, having realized it for himself through direct knowledge. The Dhamma he knew is the Dhamma you know. The Dhamma you know is the Dhamma he knew. As he was, so are you. As you are, so was he. Come, friend, lead this community. In this way did Uddaka Ramaputa, my companion in the holy life, place me in the position of teacher and pay me great honor. But the thought occurred to me, this Dhamma leads not to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to awakening, nor to unbinding, nibbana, but only to reappearance in the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. So, dissatisfied with that Dhamma, I left. Majjhima Nikaya, MN 36, Mahasakaka. Sutta, the longer discourse to Sakaka. He practices extreme austerities in the forest. I thought, suppose that I, clenching my teeth and pressing my tongue against the roof of my mouth, were to beat down, constrain, and crush my mind with my awareness. So, clenching my teeth and pressing my tongue against the roof of my mouth, I beat down, constrained, and crushed my mind with my awareness. Just as a strong man, seizing a weaker man by the head or the throat or the shoulders would beat him down, constrain, and crush him, in the same way I beat down, constrained, and crushed my mind with my awareness. As I did so, sweat poured from my armpits. And although tireless persistence was aroused in me and unmuddled mindfulness established, my body was aroused and uncalm because of the painful exertion. But the painful feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. I thought, suppose I were to become absorbed in the trance of non-breathing. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths in my nose and mouth. As I did so, there was a loud roaring of winds coming out my ear holes, just like the loud roar of winds coming out of a smith's bellows. So I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths in my nose and mouth and ears. As I did so, extreme forces sliced through my head, just as if a strong man were slicing my head open with a sharp sword. Extreme pains arose in my head, just as if a strong man were tightening a turban made of tough leather straps around my head. Extreme forces carved up my stomach cavity, just as if a butcher or his apprentice were to carve up the stomach cavity of an ox. There was an extreme burning in my body, just as if two strong men, grabbing a weaker man by the arms, were to roast and broil him over a pit of hot embers. And although tireless persistence was aroused in me, and unmuddled mindfulness established, my body was aroused and uncalm because of the painful exertion. But the painful feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. Devas, on seeing me, said, "Gautama the contemplative is dead." Other devas said, "He isn't dead, he's dying." Others said, "He's neither dead nor dying, he's an arahant, for this is the way arahants live." I thought, suppose I were to practice going altogether without food. Then Deva came to me and said, "Dear sir, please don't practice going altogether without food. If you go altogether without food, we'll infuse divine nourishment in through your pores, and you will survive on that." I thought, if I were to claim to be completely fasting while these devas are infusing divine nourishment in through my pores, I would be lying. So I dismissed them, saying, "Enough." I thought, suppose I were to take only a little food at a time, only a handful at a time of bean soup, lentil soup, veg soup, or pea soup. So I took only a little food at a time, only handful at a time of bean soup, lentil soup, veg soup, or pea soup. My body became extremely emaciated. Simply from my eating so little, my limbs became like the jointed segments of vine stems or bamboo stems. My backside became like a camel's hoof. My spine stood out like a string of beads. My ribs jutted out like the jutting rafters of an old, run-down barn. The gleam of my eyes appeared to be sunk deep in my eye sockets, like the gleam of water deep in a well. my scalp shriveled and withered like a green bitter gourd, shriveled and withered in the heat and the wind. The skin of my belly became so stuck to my spine that when I thought of touching my belly, I grabbed hold of my spine as well, and when I thought of touching my spine, I grabbed hold of the skin of my belly as well. If I urinated or defecated, I fell over on my face right there. Simply from my eating so little, if I tried to ease my body by rubbing my limbs with my hands, the hair, rotted at its roots, fell from my body as I rubbed, simply from eating so little. People on seeing me would say, Gautama the contemplative is black. Other people would say, Gautama the contemplative isn't black, he's brown. Others would say, Gautama the contemplative is neither black nor brown, he's golden-skinned. So much had the clear, bright color of my skin deteriorated, simply from eating so little. I thought, whatever Brahmins or contemplatives in the past have felt painful, racking, piercing feelings due to their striving, this is the utmost. None have been greater than this. Whatever Brahmins or contemplatives in the future will feel painful, racking, piercing feelings due to their striving, this is the utmost. None will be greater than this. Whatever Brahmins or contemplatives in the present are feeling painful, racking, piercing feelings due to their striving, this is the utmost. None is greater than this. But with this racking practice of austerities, I haven't attained any superior human state, any distinction in knowledge or vision worthy of the noble ones. Could there be another path to awakening? Majjhima Nikaya, MN 36, Mahasakaka Sutta, the longer discourse to Sakaka. He confronts fear and terror head-on. I stayed in the sort of places that are awe-inspiring and make your hair stand on end, such as park shrines, forest shrines, and tree shrines. And while I was staying there, a wild animal would come, or a bird would make a twig fall, or wind would rustle the fallen leaves. The thought would occur to me, is this that fear and terror coming? Then the thought occurred to me, why do I just keep waiting for fear? What if I were to subdue fear and terror in whatever state they come? So when fear and terror came while I was walking back and forth, I would not stand or sit or lie down. I would keep walking back and forth until I had subdued that fear and terror. When fear and terror came while I was standing, I would not walk or sit or lie down. I would keep standing until I had subdued that fear and terror. When fear and terror came while I was sitting, I would not lie down or stand up or walk. I would keep sitting until I had subdued that fear and terror. When fear and terror came while I was lying down, I would not sit up or stand or walk. I would keep lying down until I had subdued that fear and terror. Majjhima Nikaya, MN 4, Bhaya Bhairava Sutta, Fear and Terror. Mara, the personification of evil, pays a visit. Monks, Mara is continually, ceaselessly hovering around you, thinking, perhaps I'll get an opportunity by means of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. Perhaps I'll get an opportunity by means of the intellect. Thus, monks, you should dwell with the doors to your senses well guarded. SN 35.199. To me, resolute in exertion near the river Naranjara, making a great effort doing jhana to attain security from bondage, Namuchi came, speaking words of compassion. You are ashen thin. Death is in your presence. Death has 1,000 parts of you. Only one part is your life. Live, good sir. Life is better. Alive, you can do acts of merit. Your living the holy life, performing the fire sacrifice, will heap up much merit. What use is exertion to you? hard to follow, the path of exertion, hard to do, hard to sustain. Saying these verses, Mara stood in the awakened one's presence. And to that Mara, speaking thus, the Blessed One said this, "Kinsmen of the heedless evil one, come here for whatever purpose. I haven't for merit even the least bit of need. Those who have need of merit, those are the ones Mara's fit to address. In me are conviction, austerity, persistence, discernment. Why, when I'm so resolute, do you petition me to live? This wind could burn up even river currents. Why, when I'm resolute, shouldn't my blood dry away? As my blood dries up, gall and phlegm dry up. As muscles waste away, the mind grows clearer. Mindfulness, discernment, concentration stand more firm. Staying in this way, attaining the ultimate feeling, the mind has no interest in sensual passions. See, a being's purity. Sensual passions are your first army. Your second is called discontent. Your third is hunger and thirst. Your fourth is called craving. Fifth is sloth and drowsiness. Sixth is called terror. Your seventh is uncertainty, hypocrisy and stubbornness. Your eighth, gains, offerings, fame, and status wrongly gained, and whoever would praise self and disparage others. That, Namuchi, is your army, the Dark One's commando force. A coward can't defeat it, but one having defeated it gains bliss. Do I carry munja grass? I spit on my life. Death in battle would be better for me than that I, defeated, survive. Sinking here, they don't appear, some Brahmins and contemplatives. They don't know the path by which those with good practices go. Seeing the bannered force on all sides, the troops, Mara. Along with his mount, I go into battle. May they not budge me from my spot. That army of yours, that the world with its divas can't overcome, I will smash with discernment, as an unfired pot with a stone. Making my resolve mastered, mindfulness well established, I will go about from kingdom to kingdom, training many disciples, they heedful, resolute, doing my bidding. Despite your wishes will go where, having gone, there's no grief. As he was overcome with sorrow, his lute fell from under his arm. Then he, the despondent spirit, right there, disappeared. Sutta Nipata 3.2, Padhana Sutta, Exertion. He abandons his austerities. I recall once when my father the Sakyan was working, and I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree, then, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. Could that be the path to awakening? Then, following on that memory, came the realization, that is the path to awakening. I thought, so why am I afraid of that pleasure that has nothing to do with sensuality, nothing to do with unskillful mental qualities? I thought, I am no longer afraid of that pleasure that has nothing to do with sensuality, nothing to do with unskillful mental qualities, but it is not easy to achieve that pleasure with a body so extremely emaciated. Suppose I were to take some solid food, some rice and porridge. So I took some solid food, some rice and porridge. Now 5 monks had been attending on me, thinking, if Gautama, our contemplative, achieves some higher state, he will tell us. But when they saw me taking some solid food, some rice and porridge, they were disgusted and left me thinking, Gautama, the contemplative, is living luxuriously. He has abandoned his exertion and is backsliding into abundance. So when I had taken solid food and regained strength, then, quite withdrawn from sensuality, withdrawn from unskillful mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born from withdrawal, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. With the stilling of directed thoughts and evaluations, I entered and remained in the second jhana. Rapture and pleasure born of composure, unification of awareness free from directed thought and evaluation, internal assurance. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. With the fading of rapture, I remained in equanimity, mindful and alert and physically sensitive of pleasure. I entered and remained in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful, he has a pleasant abiding. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, as with the earlier disappearance of elation and distress, I entered and remained in the fourth jhana, purity of equanimity and mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain. But the pleasant feeling that arose in this way did not invade my mind or remain. Majjhima Nikaya, MN 36, Mahasakaka Sutta, the longer discourse to Sakaka, discourse to Sakaka, discourse to Sakaka, discourse to Sakaka.